Earlier, I spoke to Maajid Nawaz from the Quilliam Foundation, who's been advising the Prime Minister on countering extremism. I began by asking him how big a problem extremism actually is.
I think this is I think we're at a national crisis, frankly. I think that 1,000 British-born and raised citizens get up and join the worst terrorist group that we've ever known in living memory. Entire families are upending and leaving, such as a family of 12 in Luton, from a grandfather down to a child of 1 year old. So I think we have a serious national crisis that we're facing, and we have to confront this. We have to have a conversation. We have to be open about it. We have to be candid. And I, for one, encourage the fact that the Prime Minister is taking this head on in the way that he is.
Right, but there's a lot of tough language. One could argue that actually this problem's existed for a decade now, and it's only at this point that he's decided to make this speech. What exactly is he going to achieve by one speech?
I don't think much will be achieved by one speech. Much is hardly ever achieved by one speech. But this speech is actually setting out a policy. So it's all about the follow-through after this speech. The PM wants to set a 5-year strategy. To do that, I strongly recommend there needs to be a coordinating body or person that's accountable directly to the Prime Minister to pull together all the various government departments so that there is that we see some form of implementation of this strategy. Look, Joe, we've been here before because the PM, let's not forget, has given similar speeches abroad. Yes, this is the first time he's given such a speech in the UK, but this is known as sort of among us practitioners as Munich 2, because the first speech that kind of was along these lines was in Munich in Germany, and that was during the coalition government, and we saw very little follow-through and implementation. So I'm optimistic this time that the Prime Minister is very serious about this. I know he is, and I hope that government departments pull together and start implementing some of the policy on this.
But what is the policy? I mean, what exactly is going to happen that is going to dramatically change in the UK and stop people travelling to places like Syria?
Well, I think we have to understand the problem isn't just people travelling to Syria. If we want to see change, we first have to understand what the problem is. I don't deserve a pat on the back for saying that I condemn ISIS. That doesn't really put me in very good company. Even Al-Qaeda condemn ISIS. ISIS is the last product of the long line of extremist organisations that have all espoused the same Islamist ideology. And when surveyed, unfortunately, my fellow co-religionists in this country, in Britain, 30% of them said they sympathise with the very notion of resurrecting a theocratic caliphate. And it's those attitudes that we need to see changed, as we've seen within our own lifespan, the change of attitudes around homophobia and around racism and anti-Semitism. We've got to start seeing a change of attitude on the issue of Islamist extremism, or, in one sentence, to give a definition, the desire to impose a version of Islam over society.
Right, so this is non-violent extremism which the Prime Minister is focusing his attention on, but what are the specific policies? Theresa May has talked about new laws that she will expand on in the autumn to deal with perhaps further bans on extremist preachers, closing down premises. Is that going to include closing down mosques if they find that there's extremist literature there?
So I'm a liberal. I'm more interested in some of the more positive action that's going to be taken and some of the more administrative action that's going to be taken. For example, I don't think it's appropriate for the Charities Commission to be supporting or endorsing bodies that, such as previously there were charities that were granting funds to organisations that were praising Jihadi John. So I think it's very important to understand what role civil society and various non-governmental bodies can play. Universities have a role. The National Union of Students has since partnered officially with that same organisation known as CAGE. I think prisons have a role to play in this. I think teachers have a role. And just as teachers are incredibly vigilant in schools when they look for paedophilia and grooming online, and they're watching their students to make sure that they're not being groomed by paedophiles, I don't see any difference in the way that ISIS grooms young girls online to take them over to become effectively sex slaves. Yes. So I think we just have to draw an analogy with all these things and say what we're doing with racism, paedophilia, homophobia and all other social ills, we need to start doing with this theocratic tendency as well.
You know that that's going to be counterproductive in some parts of the Muslim community, isn't it? In fact, yeah. if you're seen to be stifling debate, the government and people like you will be criticised for trying to prevent free speech, and that could actually send even more people into the arms of ISIS.
If we were to stifle debate, it could do. I'm not encouraging stifling debate, and nor is the Prime Minister. I see this speech as actually opening the debate up. It's the first time such a candid, open and frank discussion has been had on a national level by the leader of this country.
That's not quite what I'm talking about. So who's going to make the judgment about what is extremist, about whether things are acceptable or not? People in the Muslim community could say that they feel that that is free speech being stifled.
No, they could say that, but that's like asking who's going to make a judgment as to whether a statement is racist or homophobic. Frankly, we're not talking about laws at this stage. This is about challenging non-violent extremism. Anyone who believes in imposing any form of my own religion over society, whether that be in a so-called moderate way, calling for example, imposing headscarves on women, or on a more rigid way, imposing the burqa on women. No form of theocracy in the modern world works. Anyone who aspires to resurrecting a form of caliphate, frankly believes in bigoted theocratic ideas. They need to be challenged. They don't need to be put in prison for those bigoted ideas, but they certainly need to be challenged, right, as we have a civil society expectation to challenge racists and homophobes.
But you still haven't answered the question about the legislation. There is going to be legislation, new laws put into place. Would you disagree with closing down premises where there could be literature deemed to be extremist, which could be a mosque?
Yeah, because I'm not the government and I'm not the Prime Minister. My views are liberal, and I believe in a civil society response to this. If a mosque is promoting violence, then of course, like any other body that promotes violence, it should be shut down.
What about this non-violent extremism?
Right. So if it's promoting extremism, for example, if it's promoting ideas such as women should be enslaved in an ideal caliphate,
why not
they
close
don't
it
go
down?
about doing it physically, then the Charities Commission does have a role in looking at the charitable status of that mosque. Absolutely it does.
Right. But not closing it down?
Well, that's a decision for the Charities Commission. That's not a decision for somebody like me, who's simply laying out the principles. I'm sure we wouldn't be happy for an organisation that supports, say, a neo-Nazi organisation receiving public funds.
Thank you.